is here that's new. This is a group that has been meeting way before I've started at my position. Group of, I guess we'd call them deacon leaders or church leaders that are leading the efforts of diaconal work in the church across the United States. And if you don't know me, my name is Jody Kuhlman, and I am the Church with Community Coordinator for World Renew. And I've been at this position since February, but the work has been going on through World Renew and through the Christian Reformed denomination, through many other people. Andy Reiskamp really was leading a lot of this efforts prior to me starting. Yes, good reminder, Andy, there are definitely people here at Canada. My role is particularly the United States. Diaconal Ministries of Canada is the organization that leads those efforts in Canada. So yes, this is a bi-national group, which is we're thankful for. So I'm going to introduce our speaker today. I'm really excited. Peter Watts. I'm going to just read a whole bunch of things about you, Peter. So I hope I got this all right. But Peter Watts, he was born and raised in Los Angeles. He has his BA in Mass Communications and a Master's in Education, Administration, Leadership. And he graduated also from Fuller Seminary with his Master's in Theology, and now is pursuing a doctoral degree. I have that right, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And he'll probably talk a little bit more about that. He taught in Los Angeles, and then he became the founding principal of the Thurgood Marshall Middle School, which was a blended learning and project-based focused school. He currently is pastor of the Rock Church in Los Angeles and is a regional director for Rewire, which trains pastors, people, and communities to be contemplatives in action. And he's also the new president of the Black Council for the RCA Church. Besides all that, he also helps to organize his community to fight for equal academic opportunities for Black students in his district. He's married to Dee Dee, and they have 3 children. And the way that I met Peter is his church, the Rock Church, applied for and received one of the World Renew church response grants from COVID. And so we just talked a lot about what his community was like, what they were doing. And as I learned more about him, I thought, wow, he would be really interesting person for us to talk with and just to learn a little bit more about all his work. In particular today, what does it mean to work for action, for social justice, for community development, but do that with a real contemplation and a heart focused on God and on Christ. So I thought this quote really summed up well what I've been hearing from Peter. He said this, God has called me to the ministry of reconciliation. And since we are all created in the image of God, called to be reconciled to Him, our new identity in Christ allows us to be reconciled to one another. And I believe that church is still the hope of the world. And as kingdom citizens, we have the responsibility to bring that hope and peace to a hostile and divided people. So thank you so much for joining us, Peter. And how I'd love you to start out is just to tell us a little bit more about yourself, your history, your church, your community, and your work with Rewire. And then we can get started into our topic.
Sure. I had a PowerPoint. Should I share that?
Sure.
Am I able to? If someone can just make me co-host or host, then I can share it.
Good point. Can someone guide me on how to, I'm the host, and does someone know how I can tell me how to share co-host with Peter?
If you hover over your name in the participants, there's a more option. And
Okay,
that drop down window, and then you can make me the co-host or host or something like that.
okay. Let me try to do that. All right. Host. Okay, give me just a minute here. When I click the more, it just allows me to rename. Let's see.
Sometimes it is also in the middle. So you see participant chat and then share screen down at the bottom. Do you have that?
I do have the
okay.
share screen,
Okay.
but I can only share my screen.
Well,
Okay.
no worries. No
How
worries.
can I share Peter's screen?
Yeah. Yep, that's your screen.
Yes. All right. Sorry, Peter. I think we maybe should have coordinated this a little bit earlier because I don't think I know how to share with you.
Okay, no worries, no worries.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So good. For me, it's still morning, afternoon. For some, my name is Pastor Peter Watts. As Jody said, I was born and raised here in Los Angeles. I haven't lived anywhere else. Visited a lot of places, but not have wanted to move to any other place, at this point. But raised, here in South Los Angeles, all over the place, really. Went to elementary school in LAUSD. And then we moved to the city of Compton when I was in middle school. So I went to middle school in Compton. And then in high school, we moved back to LA, where I went to a private parochial high school in the city of Watts. And then again, my educational career was at Cal State Dominguez and then at Fuller, and currently in a doctoral program at Fuller. It's a dual program with Fuller and North Park University in Chicago, and it's a DMin in theology with an emphasis on urban ministry. And it's a 5-year program. And the cohort that I'm a part of, Dr. Soong Chan Ra is my professor. And so this is my 3rd year. I have 2 years left. And so I've been spending, I'll be spending like 5 years under his leadership in that program. Been married for 26 years now. And I have 3 adult children. My oldest daughter, she just turned 29. Yeah, I know I look like I'm 16, but she just turned 29. She just passed her test day before yesterday. We celebrated last night. She just passed her test. She's now a licensed therapist. And so she's now certified with the board in California and all that stuff. So we're really excited about that. My son is a middle school teacher in Koreatown here in LA. And he teaches middle school PE. And then my youngest daughter just graduated from Spelman College in Atlanta, which was an all-girl college, HBCU, historically Black university in Atlanta. And she just graduated with her degree in dance. She's been dancing since middle school. She danced for Debbie Allen and was part of the Debbie Allen Dance Academy. So she's been doing dance, for a very long time. And so she just got a job probably about a month ago teaching dance here in LA. So we're pretty proud and excited about our kids. My wife is still in education. She's a VP of education at a nonprofit called Vista Del Mar, and she's over their special ed school. And probably about 280 students with special needs, emotional disturbance, and autism on the autism spectrum, pre-K through 24-year-olds. And so that's the work that she does. My wife and I planted our church, The Rock, in 2008. We organized in 2010, and so we just celebrated 12 years as a church this past September. Been in an RCA. Our church is a RCA church plant. And so that's the work we've been doing here in LA for that amount of time with the RCA, and kind of a connection with the CRC. One of the projects I worked on probably about 4 or 5 years ago is I helped to start the Kingdom Enterprise Zone, Los Angeles, KZLA. I was one of the founding members of the KZLA that we did out here to facilitate multiplications of church plants and church plant movements here in LA with joint ventures with the CRC and RCA. So that's kind of a connection I have with the CRC. And so, yeah, so that's just a little bit about me. Been an educator as well, taught elementary school, started a middle school, and turned our middle school into a blended learning, project-based learning school. And so not knowing that COVID would hit and schools would close, we were in 2010 already doing online learning and face-to-face instruction in like a micro school model. And so when COVID hit and schools closed, even though I had left education, I still have, of course, friends in the district and in charter schools, and they were calling me, said, "Thank you so much for the vision that you gave." And so it's so much easier for us to make this transition with families and kids because of the work that you helped to start here. And so that was pretty cool. So that's just a little bit about me and my life. Yeah.
Peter, I think I figured out with the help of others how to share you as host. So I think you can share the screen now.
Great. And let's see. So there's a picture of me and my family. That's this is my oldest daughter. That's my wife. That's my son. That's me and my daughter. I know we all look like we're brothers and sisters.
All right. So Peter, if you want to talk to us a little bit about what this means to you, this paying attention to our spiritual inner life in order to lead more outwardly, and just take us through some of that.
Yeah. So as I was sharing about my church community, we do a lot of community work, development work, and community development work and advocacy. I kind of call it like the 4 levels of mercy. You have relief, you have development, you have community development, then you have advocacy. And that relief piece is more of like us in the neighborhood serving in meeting needs in our community, meeting needs in the city. And so kind of an example of that at our church is a partnership that we do with an organization called Care Portal. And Care Portal focuses on families and youth in foster care. And so we have a unique focus in foster care ministry at our church. And so we connect with DCFS, Child and Family Services, and we use this platform called Care Portal where they put needs into the system. Those needs come to us as a church and we can decide whether or not we can meet those needs. So sometimes it's, this family needs a bed, this family needs a refrigerator, it needs school clothes or something like that. And so what we end up doing is, as a church community, coming together, praying over those needs and seeing where God wants to lead us in that and what needs he would want us to meet. And so that's even part of like the flow of our liturgy, of our service. That's part of what we do. And so we go out and we meet those needs. So the picture here is a picture of a family here in LA, close by our church, who's dealing with COVID and school being closed and school year starting, and they didn't have any school clothes. The mom here is a foster parent, and she was in need. And so her caseworker put this need into the system. That need came to us, and we were able to go and buy school clothes for this family, and we're able to deliver those school clothes and be the point of care for this family. And so when the church shows up, they get to see us as the church being active in their community and in their lives. And so a lot of times it's just, us delivering and them saying thank you, and, us meeting these families. But then sometimes it's us meeting those families and being in their homes or in their community and finding out that there are deeper needs that are there. And so sometimes we have an opportunity to pray for families. Sometimes we have an opportunity to share the gospel with families. And so the actual, what we call relief efforts, the actual meeting the needs, is just a tool for us to be able to get to know people in our community and to find out where the real hurts and pains are in our neighborhood. Another kind of thing that we do in terms of relief is our partnership with Children's Hunger Fund. And we do food distribution. And so when COVID hit, we knew that there was already food insecurity in our community. There were already food deserts in our community. And so we were able to partner with Children's Hunger Fund. And so every other weekend, we do food distribution in our community. When we first started doing it, I remember we were out in the streets with signs saying, hey, free food, come, pick up groceries, fresh produce, and things like that. And when we were able to apply for the World Renew grant, it helped us to be able to fix our van that we got donated to be able to pick up more boxes of food and supplies and things like that. And it also increased our kind of footprint or awareness in the community. And so now, when we first started, we used to be again in the streets with signs saying free food, come get fresh produce. Now when we set up, when the tent goes up in front of our church, there's a line already there, because now everybody in our community knows every other Saturday from 2 to 4, the Rock Church is open and doing the food distribution. And so we've been able to meet a whole lot more people in our neighborhood because of this. As a matter of fact, this past Saturday, there was a woman who came who's homeless. And she lives in the underpass of the freeway close to where I live. And she came and she was sharing that that she needed food, but she shared that in her words, they make me take drugs, so I can't stop taking them. And I want to go home to my sister, but my sister won't let me come in the house because they make me take drugs. So we kind of concluded that there was some kind of sex trafficking kind of thing going on, and she's being prostituted. And so she said, I feel tormented by spirits. And so at that moment, while we were doing the food distribution, we were able to stop everything that we were doing, and we all gathered around her and began to pray for her. And so now we know who she is. We know her name. We know where she is. And so now we, as a church, because she's right down the street, and like when I say down the street, like walking distance from the church, to where we can now watch and kind of help her in her situation to help her get well. And so that's kind of the relief piece. The development piece for us has to do with skill development with those in our community, with our Saturday programming that we would do with young people, life skills development, job skills development, and then our advocacy piece is around education. We're part of a larger organization that we partner with called Innovate Public Schools. And so what we did, this is our little group here. And this group is called the Black Parent Leadership Team. There are 50,000 students in LAUSD. When you think about LAUSD and how large the district is, being the second largest district in the country, you would think that 50,000 students that are of African descent is not a lot. But when we did the data, we found out that if those 50,000 students were their own district, they'd be the 7th largest district in California. And so we took that data to LAUSD and said, these 50,000 students are not performing, at grade level like they should be. There's something, you need to do something, and you need to be held accountable. And so we started organizing for a whole year, meeting with parents, doing house meetings, research meetings with key people in the district, with different council members and other community organizers. And December of last year of 2019, we were able to get the superintendent at church. We had what we call a action day. And so we spent 365 days, research meetings, meeting with district officials. And then on that action day, the superintendent showed up to the church and the parents showed up to the church, and he made a commitment to make sure that he will be unapologetic about resources and intervention for Black students in his district. And so that was a huge win for us. And it would not have happened had we not done the community kind of organizing work that we were doing with our church and in our community, and meeting with parents in our community. And I tell you, we do all of this, but all of this means nothing if we're not doing it from a place of what I say is of rest. Because what would happen is that you can do all of these kinds of things that we're doing and then burn out. Or you can feel like you're doing a whole lot of things and get discouraged because you don't see anything change, or you're just doing it to be able to pat yourself on the back and say, look what I'm doing. But it has to come from a deeper place. It has to come from an intimacy with God. And so what we call it, at our church and with the work that I do is being contemplatives in action. And there's a quote that I read the other day by Howard Thurman and by Thomas Merton. And it said that the contemplative life is not and cannot be a mere withdrawal, a pure negation, or a turning of one's back on the world with its sufferings, its crisis, its confusions, and its errors. He says, all my life, I've been seeking to validate beyond all ambivalence and frustration the integrity of the inner life. I have sensed the urgency to find a way to act and react responsibly out of my own center. And so when I heard those words, or when I hear those words, it reminds me of the work that that contemplatives do. Howard Thurman is one of my heroes of the faith, and I was drawn to Howard Thurman after finding out that he was the spiritual director for Martin Luther King. And when I found that out, it made sense in how King was able to do the work he did without reacting out of his flesh in all of the things that he was coming up against. And so when I dug more into the life of Howard Thurman, it made me think more about what does it mean to be a contemplative, because my church background, the whole idea of contemplation and meditation and listening, prayer, and lectio divina, like all of those different practices, I was not familiar with that at all. All I knew about was Bible studies and preaching and serving in the neighborhood, but it was never about doing it from a healthy place. And so when for the past 5 years, I was with an organization called World Impact, which focuses on raising up Indigenous leaders to launch church plants and church planting movements. And I spent 5 years training church planters that were planting in communities of poverty. That work is tough, right? And but what I found was that we were good at teaching church planters and pastors how to do strategic plans. Let's do vision. Let's talk about mission. Let's talk about core values. Let's talk about how you're going to do evangelism, how you're going to do discipleship, like all of these different things. But we were never good at teaching people how to do it from a healthy place. So what would end up happening is that pastors would experience trauma in the neighborhood, the secondary trauma, because of the trauma that people that they were in community with were experiencing trauma. They would be unhealthy. They would be tired. They would be frustrated and burned out. And the next thing you know, pastors are having moral failures. Their families are falling apart. Kids are falling apart. And I said, well, we spend a lot of time talking about planting healthy churches, but we never talk about planting healthy families. So what would it look like if we spent more time working from a place of health with leaders, with church planters, with pastors, so that so that when they're doing the work, they can do it from a plate that's full versus from a soul that's empty. And so that's kind of the work that I've been doing currently with my current organization with Rewire, and how we go about doing our work at the Rock Church as well.
Great. So can you talk about some of the sort of the process you might take some churches or pastors through, sort of to teach that and to instill that in them?
Yes, I sure can. So so at Rewire, so what we do is that we train pastors and people and congregations to be, again, contemplatives in action. And we kind of see it as a process. And so we go from leadership development to formation to incubation to what we call maturation. And so the leadership development piece is what we call our missional leadership cohorts. And that's where we have small cohorts of pastors. And we spend about a year, 2 years with pastors thinking through formation, thinking through what does it look like to be a leader that is leading from, again, a place of health. And so those 2 years, we deal with some of these topics here of, the missional shift, solidarity with the poor. What does it mean for the true self, false self? And then introducing them and getting them used to different types of spiritual practices. Then we take those leaders, and those leaders then move to what we call formation, or teaching beyond courses. And our beyond courses really are for the congregation, because what we want to do is to get the pastor to encourage his or her members to be missionaries and not members. So how do we move the church from thinking about being a member to being a missionary? How do we turn our focus from inwardly to outwardly? How do we help people discover their own call in the church to live it out in the places where they already are? And so that's what, so those are the kind of formation beyond courses we do. So like I just taught for the past 10 weeks, I just taught a class called Care for the Poor. And it was to a church in Silicon Valley who was trying to figure out, how do we move from, with the resources that we have, how do we move from, accumulating all these resources to actually being in solidarity with those who are under-resourced. And so took them through this whole 10-week process about moving from being inwardly focused to being in solidarity with those who are in communities of poverty. Another class that I did, and even did with my church, was this class called Centered Living. And the Centered Living class was all about spiritual practices. How do we incorporate spiritual practices and disciplines into our lives and into the life of the church? And so we go from missional leadership cohorts to beyond classes to what we call deep waters. And that's where we go from inward to outward to together. And so now people in the church say, you know what, I feel called to some place, or I feel called to a group of people. Some feel called to Skid Row. Some people feel called to foster care. Some people feel called to, like in LA, a lot of people feel called to the creative artist community in Hollywood. And so it just depends on where God is pricking their hearts, where God is breaking their hearts. And so they do deep waters, and deep waters is them deciding to actually move into community and to be in solidarity with those communities that they are that they feel called to. And then lastly, the goal is to create kingdom outposts. And a kingdom outpost is just a small expression of the church in what we call broken places. And so, but to get to the kingdom outpost, there's this whole process that we take people through, from missional leadership cohorts with pastors to teaching members to be outward focused missionaries, to then training them to create these expressions of the kingdom in different places, across the city.
So this is a question, I think, but it's something that this group has talked a bit about. I think we understand that congregations really have a heart to serve, and big hearts, right? But this connecting and being in solidarity with the poor and the marginalized is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we, and sometimes the way we serve ends up that we're acting more as saviors
Mm-hmm.
than in solidarity. So how do you move somebody or a church community from that posture to more of a solidarity or being allies of a community?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is that. And what I find is that the reason why it becomes a challenge is because the heart is there to serve, to be in solidarity. But I think the way we've looked at missions historically has not been right. In that it's the feeling of, I have something that somebody needs, and when I go there, they I'll give what I need, and it'll be appreciative, and all that kind of thing. But we've never kind of looked at, what does it look like to actually receive from those communities as well. Meaning that here you have, and I deal with it all the time, you have a resource church that has a heart for Skid Row, ministry on Skid Row, and they want to be able to do something. And so they'll do like these short-term mission trips, and they'll take people down to be at Skid Row and to be there. But it becomes more of like a tour of like this kind of exotic thing that's happening that I'm really disconnected from. And so the unintentional consequences becomes, here comes the Savior to come and save all the poor people from all their misery. Instead of looking at, I wonder where God is already at work, and I wonder what churches and leaders are already there doing the work. How can I find out who's already there that's been doing the work, and come alongside them and serve under them to empower them to do it? That's a totally different kind of paradigm from me doing the work as a person that's resourced, to actually supporting the work that's already happening. And so I'll give you an example. Being at World Impact is like 50 years old now. And when they started in Watts, out of the Watts riots, and what the model was, people from middle America would come, and they'd come and move into the neighborhood. They would buy houses, they would buy commercial property, set up these ministry centers, and then they do Bible clubs. Kids come, they get saved. They would start mobile medical clinics, teen centers, camps, like all this wonderful stuff. And then this urban church that's been there for the past 30 years, been doing the work, they just didn't have the resources that World Impact had to come and do the work. And so it created this big divide of, oh yeah, you can do that because you have the money, but we've been doing it for 30 years. We just didn't have the reason. What if World Impact would have come in and said, Pastor so-and-so, we see that you've been in this neighborhood, and we've seen that you've been bivocational because your church can support you as a full-time. What if we came alongside you and resourced you to do that work? And then we have actually missionaries who can come and be a part of your ministry and serve under you to support the ministry there, to train leaders with you. That's, again, totally different paradigm. So instead of taking all of my toys and bringing them to an under-resourced community and saying, look what we can do, how about we say, we know that you're doing the work, and we can come and be the wind beneath your wings kind of approach.
So as many of us on this call probably are working out of a denominationally, how do you think that works?
I'm thinking about that now, with my role in the RCA, and looking at the churches that are, so I'm the coordinator for African American Black Council, and so I give leadership to all the churches across the denomination that are of African descent, leaders of African descent. And so what I've been thinking through is, what does it look like for churches in the RCA who are resourced to partner with churches in the RCA that are under-resourced or that are in under-resourced communities. And so I think that in terms of that partnership within a denomination, there's a way to be able to partner in that way, especially if they're in close proximity to one another. There's relationship building that can happen, and bridges that can be built to do that work together. And I think that as a denomination, especially if from the executive level, staff level, if that there's an appetite for that to be able to see that happen across the denomination, to where it's not just a church over here doing it, a church over here doing it, but it becomes like a systemic thing, in a way to do it across the denomination systemically.
What do you feel like being contemplatives helps in that process? What do you think church leaders need to learn as contemplatives to change the way that we do ministry?
Yeah, I think being contemplatives would having an intimacy with Christ and really listening and hearing God speak in that way allows you to not get your feelings hurt when you go to do the work and somebody says, nope, that's not what we want. Or nope, that wasn't the right thing, kind of thing. But being contemplative again allows you to do it again from a place of health, so that when those challenges do happen, there's not this internal kind of reaction that says, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore because it's just not working. Nobody's appreciative of the work that and that's from experience, because there have been many times in ministry where I've been offended when I wasn't in a healthy place. So even within the leadership of my church, somebody said something to me, or somebody did something and I was just offended by it. But when I sat back and kind of did a prayer of examine to see where God was working and where I was in the flesh, and it allowed me to say, you know what, that actually wasn't offensive. It was that I was already unhealthy when I went into this situation, and I need to just back up and really deal with whatever internal stuff I already had going on before I engaged in the work that I was doing.
What spiritual practices have been most, I guess, helpful or meaningful to you as you do your work in community?
The one of the spiritual practices has been the practice of hospitality, what I call like radical hospitality, inviting in what we call the other. And I've been doing that recently with the young adults in our church. And this work started probably about right before COVID hit in February. And we were thinking about hospitality, radical hospitality, because we got accepted into a program that Fuller was doing called Ministry Innovation to Young Adults. They had gotten a Lilly grant, and so they were using the Lilly grant to do this project. And so it was basically looking at all of the historic practices like hospitality and lament and all these different things, and then reinventing those practices for young adults. What do those practices look like today? And so so the Lord drew us as we were working with our young adults at church and thinking about how do we as a church honor young adults and be a place for next generation leaders. And so it it fell on hospitality, because the young adults were saying, we don't feel welcomed when we come to church. We feel like we're judged all the time. We don't feel like our ideas are valued. All things that millennials and Gen Zs are saying today about the church in general. And so when we started doing this process of hospitality and practice of hospitality, and listening to the young adults in our church and outside of our church and our community, the narrative, the false narrative was, I got it. So that's what young adults were saying. The false narrative was, I got it. And I got it meant, even though it looks like I got it, I really don't. But the reason why I'm going to say I got it is because if I tell people the truth that I don't have it together, then I'll be judged. So I'm just going to tell my parents, I'm going to tell people in the church, oh, I got it. Have you ever heard young adults say that before? And so we wanted to move. So we want to move them from I got it to God's got it, and I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So we're trying to move young adults from I got it to God's got it. And the way we are doing that is through the practice of hospitality. And so what do young adults love to do in LA? And the thing that young adults love to do in LA on Sunday, instead of going to church, is going to brunch. They love brunch. That's their church. And so we said, okay, well, we'll meet them right where they are. So we have some young adults in our church. My youngest daughter is leading it with her best friend, and they're having brunch on Sunday mornings. And so they invite all of their unsaved friends to brunch. And so we use, part of the grant money we got from Fuller to pay for their brunch. And so when the kids hear, oh, you can come to brunch for free, and we'll pay, they're like, oh, we'll show up. And so they show up, and we give them questions. And the questions have been, can you talk about trauma? Can you talk about how the church has traumatized you? Can you talk about how the church can be a place of healing? Can you talk about, so we give them all these different topics to talk about, and they record it. And so we have all this recorded video of young adults in LA who are having brunch, talking about life and talking about the church. And so my wife and I now watch those videos, and we create some talk sheets. And so now we're going to be showing up to brunch to engage young adults to say, okay, so let's talk about trauma. And so we'll be engaging. And so it's a way, again, for this practice of hospitality for us, it's how we're showing radical hospitality to invite people who would not come to church, be welcome and invited in. So that's kind of for us right now. That's where we are in terms of practices at our church and what we're doing specifically.
That's cool. I'm just going to open it up to questions, and I mean, Peter can answer a lot of different questions on all kinds of things. So go ahead and ask your question.
Peter, I caught my attention when you talked about you personally doing the prayer of examine. I like that. Maybe just talk a little bit more about that. I think it's a wonderful process. Maybe just tell a little bit more about that. I'd like to hear.
Yeah. So on Thursdays, so the rhythm of our church right now is worship on Sunday, and everything is, of course, online, and through Zoom. But we do worship on Sundays. We have Bible study on Mondays, and then we have prayer on Thursdays. And our prayer time is engaging the spiritual practices, the different spiritual practices. And so we would do a season of Lectio Divina. We would do a season of listening prayer, breath prayer. And so we have been in a season of the prayer of examine. And you have to remember, so my church is made up of predominantly African-American and Latino, Spanish-speaking. The spiritual practices and formations, again, is a language that was unfamiliar to my community. And so when we started engaging at first, some of the Latino members in our church said, this feels real Catholic, right? Because that's their background. They come in, someone will come from, are we Catholic? We're not Catholic, or kind of thing. And so, but we were really trying to give them language and actually a way, again, to hear and listen to God. And so a lot of times in church, you hear a pastor say, they'll read the scripture saying, meditate on the Lord day and night. You're like, okay, meditate. Okay, cool. What is meditate? How do you meditate? And so when we were able to give them the tool of Lectio Divina, it was like, here's a way to meditate on the word. And it just like changed their world of like, well, I can use this tool for meditation, right? And so with the prayer of examine, when we were going through the season of prayer of examine, we were asking people like, where did you see God in your day? When did God show up? And so we do the prayer of examine in the season that we were doing our prayer practices of on those Thursdays of, hey, at the end of the day, before you go to sleep, here are a list of questions. And we want you to think about your day. And as you're thinking about your day, where did you see God show up? Where were you still enough to where you heard God's voice? And so it's a whole litany of questions and ways in which we engage at the end of the day in our journals to do the prayer of examine. And people use that and look back on that, and it helps them to, again, slow down during the day to really recognize when God is at work in their day.
Pastor Peter, Andy Reiskamp here. First of all, thanks very much for taking time to spend some learning time for us, with us, and appreciate it very much. Your experience there is very broad. And I have my mind going in many directions, but I have two questions basically. Number one is the Center for Action and Contemplation with Richard Rohr talks a lot about silence. So I wonder if you have incorporated the practice of silence into your personal life. The second question is one around more of the broad-based organizing, more of a practical kind of question. And that's, I think you mentioned Innovate Leadership is the broader network that you work with in your school program. Mm-hmm. But talk a little bit more about how you at the local level relate to that broader organization.
Yep. So to your first question about silence, so what one of the biggest things that I had to figure out was, how do you silence and be still in the city? There is no time of quiet. Like where I live, right behind me in my backyard is the 10 freeway. It is a freeway. Well, there's never like this silence, right? And so for me, the silence was, what does it mean to be an urban contemplative in the city? So in the mornings, going on walks around my city before people get up for work. Sometimes every last Monday of the month, I shut everything off from 8 to 12, and I spend time reading, journaling, and praying. And then every quarter, I do a day retreat, a silent retreat. And I used to be able to go to this camp that World Impact has or had, where I would go, and it's probably about 30 minutes away from here in the city, where I could get away to do a silent solitude and silence retreat as well. But when I think about the silence, it's really silencing or quieting what's going on in me versus trying to quiet the noise around me. And so that's kind of how I deal with the silence piece. And then to your point about the organizing work, so Innovate, again, Innovate Public Schools is a larger organization across the state of California, and they work in different cities in the Bay Area and all down the West Coast. And so our work and engagement with Innovate is not a Christian organization, but what we do as a church, we do what I can't pronounce her name out. I have her book, but it's called Faith.
Alexia?
Yes, Alexia, Faith Rooted Organizing. And so it's the same principles that Innovate uses, but we look at it from the lens of the kingdom of God. And so when we talk about, when they talk about like doing one-on-ones, with as an organizing principle, our one-on-ones is really talking to the people in our community and getting as close to the pain as possible in our conversations, and then lifting them up to do the work of organizing versus us doing it. Because again, the best people who are able to do the work are the people who are closest to the pain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's helpful. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else with a question?
And I'll say lastly too, in terms of the organizing piece, so in urban communities, a lot of people think about getting out. So the whole idea is, I grew up in this neighborhood, I had an opportunity to go to college, and now I got a degree and I can get out. I can move to a better neighborhood, better place. Well, that creates a vacuum. So if all of the gifted and talented and people end up leaving and getting out, then it just creates again this vacuum. And so my wife and I made a commitment to not get out, but to stay in. And so what we've decided to do was to rearrange our lives so that we can stay in the communities that we grew up in, instead of moving to suburbs or to gated communities where we would where our kids would feel safe and all that kind of stuff. And so now we encourage our friends that we've been able to meet along the way, who go on to college or have opportunities to get away, and we've been encouraging people to move back in into what we call re-entrify instead of gentrify. So we call it re-entrification. So how can we call upon those men and women who, again, been able to get some level of education and success in life, whatever you measure as success, but to come back to the neighborhood and maybe gentrify your own neighborhood, right? Re-entrify your neighborhood and do community development work and build people up and that kind of thing. So that's the work that we're committed to. So when I left World Impact, we lived in World Impact housing. And when I was on staff at World Impact, we didn't have to pay rent or anything for the 5 years that we lived here. And so when I left World Impact, I could have left and gone back to the community where we had come from, but we decided to stay here and decided to buy the house that World Impact owned. And so we just literally closed on the house that we have now here, probably about a month or 2 months ago. And it's directly across the street from our church. And so everybody in the neighborhood knows that I'm the pastor of the church here on the corner. People come to the house all the time. When the riots and stuff were happening in the city, one of World Impact buildings had caught on fire because a homeless encampment had caught on fire in front of it. People from the community ran to my door and said, "Pastor, your building on the corner." I was like, "That's not my building, but I will go and call World Impact and let them know." So like everybody knows that I'm connected to whatever is happening here on the corner in the street. And so it's not just a good feeling, but it's rewarding in knowing that that people know that the pastor and the pastor's family is here, and a theme of our church this year has been rooted here, and not leaving in that way.
Peter, can I ask you a question as well? So I'm wearing a bracelet that my husband made that says Ora et Labora, which is pray and work, as a reminder, because I'm more activist than contemplative. So I'm working on that part. But I'm struggling with, so we're using ABCD, asset-based community development principles in our organization. That's pretty much our focus. But we have outside groups coming in that are very much into Sal Alinsky kind of model organizing, which totally drives me crazy. And I'm not sure how to balance the two, because I love the people that are engaging in it, but I don't like the format, and I'm not sure how to partner in a way that's for the well-being of the community, I guess.
Can you give me an example of one, of like a conflict or struggle?
They are very aggressive against our city council because I don't feel that the city council is doing what they want them to do. And so they will be shaming them. So if I go to any of their meetings, there will always be places set up for the police force and for the city mayor and things, but they are not showing up because they have been shamed so many times and pushed into corners. And so then in front of the whole group that's there, they will go, you should be here and you didn't show up, and it gets videotaped and all this stuff. And I don't want to be at those meetings because I don't want to be associated with aggression against our government. I'd rather use a carrot than a stick, if that works.
Yeah.
I don't know if that phrase works, although sometimes the carrots needs to be really hard to knock them over the head after all. So, but yeah.
No, that's good. That's really good because I'll give you an example. So out here in LA, one of the biggest chapters of Black Lives Matter movement is in LA, and very effective. And so there had been conflict between the Black church and Black Lives Matter because the Black church here didn't really agree or believe in the tactics in the way that the shaming, right, that was happening, that the Black Lives Matter movement was doing. And so I remember when George Floyd incident happened and you had all these protests all around the country, here in LA, that there was a demonstration that was being planned. And it wasn't until the church stepped in, and again, this is the context in LA, until the church stepped in to do protest, that the spirit of the protest changed from being seen on the news as violent protests to peaceful protests, because the narrative that was happening, at least on the news here in LA, was that Black Lives Matter movement, is doing protests and it's violent and da 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 da, and really that wasn't true. It was just like some factions of some agitators that were doing that, but it got painted as the whole Black Lives Matter movement doing that. And so when the church stepped in to do a protest, to hold LAPD accountable and for some things that were going on out here, the whole spirit of the movement and protest out here in LA changed, and even the narrative changed. And so the church had to still engage and be a part of the protest, but we did it again from the kingdom of God perspective, for lack of a better term. And it just I can't explain it, but it just shifted the atmosphere. It just shifted the way things were happening here in LA. And so now the Black Lives Matter movement in LA and the church don't have a conflict now. And so now Black Lives Matter are actually asking if the church can support them by allowing them to use music equipment when they're out, because they don't have music equipment, right? So the church has been letting them use like the microphones and all that kind of stuff, to do their protests. And they've been they've been letting the preachers preach during the protest while it's happening there. And so that's been a great way that I've seen here in LA in particular, and how that kind of shift happened. And I'll say this. So part of work I'm doing, I'm working with I don't know if you know his name, but Ephraim Smith. And so we were on a call yesterday, and we were talking about justice-oriented work. And we were talking about how the church shouldn't, at least the Black church, shouldn't see Black Lives Matter as as an enemy, but see it as a mission field. And when we can see it as a mission field, it really changes how we engage the movement, because now we want to go and introduce Jesus to every single person that's there, because whether we want to accept it or not, at least in the Black church, the reason why the millennials are not showing up is because they've lost faith in what the church was doing on the ground. And so they've decided to join a movement that felt like real tangible things were happening, that they can be a part of. And so if the church doesn't decide to engage the movement, we're going to lose a generation.
That I love what you're talking about. I could talk about this for a while. Just the example of once the church got involved, it's almost like divisiveness was dissipated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet so many people, so many churches are afraid to get involved in the justice issue thinking,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what would you say? I'm going to sort of end with this kind of, what would you say to the church about getting involved in justice issues, in particular, fighting against racism? What do we need to do? What would be a helpful process?
Understanding that racism is not just individual, personally mediated kind of acts, but that there's also internal racism, but then there's also systemic. And so I've been working with some pastors with this movement called Beyond Words, and it's a movement that's bringing together white clergy and Black clergy to partner on dismantling racism. And so we go through this process of truth telling, let's just tell the truth of the history of the country, because there are some things that I didn't even learn growing up in school until I got older. It's like, oh, nobody told me about this. Why did I learn about Black Wall Street as an adult, and how that and how the government was involved in that? Why wasn't that in the history book? Why did I not know that African Americans owned the land, and then the government took it away, and now it's Central Park in New York? Why didn't I know that? It's a whole bunch of history in our country that was just absent from the books. And so we go through this process of truth telling. And then we go from truth telling to lament, because once you start finding out about all these things, it just breaks your heart, and you have to lament. And then people jump from lament to try and get to reconciliation, but there's this time of repentance. And this repentance piece then leads to forgiveness. But this is where I think the stoppage happens, because the forgiveness piece, people are expecting, okay, I've repented, now I need you to forgive. But with racism, there's this internal kind of forgiveness that needs to happen for people of color and African Americans in particular, because there's a whole bunch of internal stuff that's happened, a whole bunch of internal trauma and the marred image of God in us, and that we have to forgive ourselves before we can even start this process of forgiving others. Because what will happen is that if we don't do the internal work, once somebody says something wrong or fumbles with something, then we go right back to going to our corners, right? And so once that internal work can begin, for African Americans, and then for white clergy, what we're talking about is the moral injury. There's a book, I can't remember the name of the book, but it talks about moral injury, and it's making relation to war, and how when soldiers are fighting and they're seeing stuff on the battlefield, it's something happens inside of them that they can't explain, but it's this PTSD where they know something is not right about what's happening in war, and it's this internal damage that happens. And so with racism, that's the same thing that's happening to a lot of our white brothers and sisters. And then there's this internal thing that's happening to our Black brothers and sisters, and it's the internal work, the contemplative work, that formation work that has to happen before we can move to kind of this reconciliation piece. So that's kind of what I talk about it and walk people through.
Well, Peter, thanks so much. I'm going to be sharing with everybody Peter's website, and in there you can learn more about him. Also, he has a book. He's an author of a book called The Prodigal Son, and there's a video clip that I think was sent out to everybody, but I'll send the link again so you can learn more about his story of his own father and some of the internal work you needed to do to sort of accept him back in your life, right?
Yep.
And then I also will send out the information about Beyond Words if you are interested as church pastors and churches to get involved in that reconciliation work. But I thought we could just end by praying for and with one another. And so the way I'm going to do this is just have us just take a time to, I'd like us all to participate, but just go around and say even just a word of hope that you have as you go into this next month. We're dealing with a lot with COVID and racism and the election, and I just want to look towards hope as we do that, as we go into Thanksgiving. So I'll start, and then I'm wondering if Peter, you want to end it?
Okay.
And even if you just say one word, that's totally all right with me.
All right.
All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time, and across time and place, you create a space for us, a space where we can get to know you, get to know each other, and get to know our communities better. There's so much we need to learn, and so much that we need to let go of. And so as we enter another month coming up soon, and through all the struggles we personally might be going through, as well as just this country and this world and our communities, I look towards hope, and I look towards a hope that's found in you. And so my hope for our churches is that they become humble, places of humility, and places where there's less of us personally and more of people seeing you.
Thank you, Lord, for Pastor Peter. We ask you to pour out your blessings on him, his family, his ministry, and thank you again for the challenge to examine so that we can see where you are active even in the midst of chaos.
Lord, as we go into the season of Christmas, Thanksgiving and Christmas, we're thankful that you moved into the neighborhood, that you became human, and that you did not go for gentrification when you moved in, Lord, but that you moved into a lowly stable to start out with. And that from the very beginning, you started to look at people through different eyes. And that you asked the little boy to give his 2 fish and his little lunch that he had, and you created something beautiful out of it. And so, Lord, we're giving our lives to you. What we have, we put into your hands, and we ask that you use it, that you use it for relief and for development and for advocacy, that you use it for the kingdom of God to become more evident. We're thankful that you moved into the neighborhood and that you are still present in our neighborhoods today.
Lord, I thank you that that you are steadfast and that we can hold on to you even in the tunnel of chaos that we are living in. Lord, you have deployed the church. They are no longer in a building, but we are all being deployed into our communities. So Lord, I pray that you would equip each person here to further advance your kingdom through each one of us. I pray for Peter and his community as he as every person in his family seems to be actively deployed into the field, working your tending your field and some harvesting. So Lord, I pray that you would bless them and protect them.
Well, Lord, we just thank you for this day, and I pray, God, that the church would take the posture of listening to the people and really listening deeply to be able to see the world from their perspective and not come with answers, but just be there to listen first. And that listening would then help us to remove labels and how we have decided to label people or groups or organizations or even ourselves, whether it's by politics or by the way we name our neighborhoods or whatever the case may be, but that we would listen, that we would remove those labels, and that we would be about building people, focused on building people and not buildings. So we thank you for the work that's happening here. We thank you for the way that you are calling and engaging your church in this season, in what many have called the Kairos moments. We pray that it would be all for your glory, and so that the world would know that you lived and you are alive today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks so much. I
you.
understand that most of you have to go, but if you could quick just say what organization or church you're coming from, I'd just love to know. I don't know some of you on this call. Rachel, do you want to start quick? You're on mute, Rachel.
Sorry, I thought I had unmuted. I'm Rachel Rugi. I work for Diaconal Ministries Canada. I'm the Western Canada Regional Ministry Developer. I live in Chilliwack, BC, which is about an hour and a half outside Vancouver. So thank you very much, Pastor Peter, for everything that you spoke on today. In BC, not only do we have skyrocketing COVID cases, we also are in the middle of a drug overdose crisis that has affected my family personally. Yeah, I find it's a very difficult time of isolation for people. So yeah, thank you very much for everything you shared and also your personal story.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Reggie, you're right below Rachel on my screen.
Hi, Peter. I'm Reggie Smith, and I am the Director of Diversity for the Christian Reformed Church. And good to finally meet you. I heard about your appointment to your position, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to connect sometime along our paths.
Amen.
Donald.
Hi, I'm Don Trapp, and I'm a representative of Calvin Christian Reformed Church in Grand Rapids, and I appreciate the opportunity to join in on this learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carla.
Hi, I'm Carla Winham. I work with Diaconal Ministries Canada. I'm a diaconal coach in the Maritime Provinces of Canada. And I'm also the Stewardship Pilot Project Coordinator. So a couple different titles with Diaconal Ministries, and this has been really great. So thank you very much.
Andy, why don't you introduce yourself, and then a few people that left, I think you had invited. So I just love to know who those were.
Okay. Andy Reiskamp. I retired from my role as director for World Renew US 5 years ago, and since then have been working part-time with the denomination to help facilitate community engagement, mostly through the diaconal office of the church, but helping churches with that generally in our systems. And I'm just glad that Jody is taking the reins of doing that in the future.
All right, Ron.
Hey, hi, I'm Ron Vandenbrink, and I guess almost all of us from Canada are with Diaconal Ministries. I'm the director of Diaconal Ministries Canada, and I live in Hamilton, Ontario, so I oversee Diaconal Ministries for the whole country, and a bunch of staff are here with us today, so it's good to see. It was good to meet you, Peter. I've heard about you, and I actually had seen a few other things you've done in the past, and so I appreciate it. And hey, welcome. And I think we'll be able to, hopefully we'll be able to stay in touch. Talk to you again. I got to run to another meeting too, which started 3 minutes ago. So
Okay.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Sherilyn.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn Minshall, also with Diaconal Ministries in Canada. Just started it in the financial coordinator job here. So I'm joining as part of my onboarding to get a broader picture of the binational diaconal team. And thank you so much, Peter, for the wisdom and encouragement you offered to us today. It was very helpful.
Oh, nice to meet you. Welcome on board. Suzanne.
I'm Suzanne Reineck with Volunteers in This. I had me on no video because I was eating my lunch while we were listening to you, Peter, and it was very fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Monica, last but not least, because you're both from California, so this is nice.
Hi, Peter. I'm Monica Gracely, and I'm in Merced, California, Central Valley, run a nonprofit called Lifeline, and we're about empowering neighborhoods to thrive using ABCD principles. And I'm on the on a team of diaconal folks here in the Central Valley to kind of push the agenda of justice forward. So thank you for your time. Appreciated it.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, everybody. And thanks again, Peter, for joining us. And we will be in touch with more ways to learn from you. So thanks.
Great. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you.